Well, welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Here we're getting started with our Cornell notes on Shakespeare and Renaissance drama. Here we go. William Shakespeare, in case some of you didn't know who he was, here's the deal. He was widely considered to be the greatest writer in the English language and the greatest playwright of all time. His plays have been produced more often and in more countries than those of any other author. He also experimented with the English language in more ways than any other author. Fun fact, he's also credited with the invention of a great number of English words, such as assassination, he came up with that. He came up with the word bump, believe it or not, and lonely, along with many other stuff like eyeballs and, I don't know, the list goes on and on and on. Interesting fact also, you'll notice playwright, the word on the first bullet point. English language and the greatest playwright of all time. Think of that as like a shipwright. A shipwright is someone who builds ships. A playwright is someone who builds plays. I think it's kind of cool that those two things are compared, but whatever. That's just me moving forward. Shakespeare is well known for the construction of the Globe Theatre. It was a three-story wooden building with an open-air courtyard in the middle where actors performed on a raised platform stage. This is a very famous theater. If you Google a picture of it, you can kind of see from these how it looks. But there are hundreds, if not thousands, of pictures on Google that you can see as well. It's a pretty cool-looking little building. The theater could hold as many as 3,000 people, big crowd for Renaissance times. Audiences became emotionally invested in performances. What that means is, just like you go to see a movie and maybe you laugh out loud, maybe you cry if it's a really sad or really romantic movie. You see that there. Just the same way you do that today, they would do the same thing when they saw these plays being put on. They often cheered, booed, and hissed out loud, even throwing rotten vegetables at the actors. So if you've ever seen like a cartoon where people were throwing vegetables at actors, this is where that's from. Shakespeare illusion. Men, fun fact at the bottom, played both male and female characters. Women were not allowed to perform. It was unladylike in those times to get up on stage and make a fool of yourself. So they left that all to men. Some literary terms that are important to know as we get into our study of theater and drama. A tragedy is a drama that ends in catastrophe. Catastrophe, of course, means very bad. Most often in death for the main characters. Tragedies often feature some kind of tragic hero. A tragic hero is the protagonist or central character, the one with whom audiences will identify. Usually a tragic hero fails in their quest or dies because of a character flaw or a cruel twist of fate. Think of it like when back in the Odyssey, Odysseus, his character flaw was his hubris, thinking he was better than the gods. Imagine that he didn't get home, that he died in the process because he thought he was better than the gods. That would have made him a tragic hero. Fortunately for him, it didn't happen that way. Another literary device is foil. A foil, not like aluminum foil, is a character whose personality and attitude contrast sharply with those of another character. So, someone who basically is the opposite of another. Having a foil in a play highlights both characters' traits. For example, a timid character or someone who's very shy can make a talkative character seem even chattier. Kind of like me and Miss Atkins, if you think about it in some ways. Literary devices. Idiom. An idiom is not an insult. It's a phrase that has a double meaning that is not clear from the individual words used. Some examples are, if I were to tell you, we're in hot water. Literally, we are not in hot water. Duh. We're in trouble. You know that we're in hot water means we're in trouble. Similarly, when Miss Atkins gives me a dirty look when I speak too long in class, You might say she gave him a dirty look. You would know that that means she looked at him angrily. You know that looks can't convey dirt. You don't shoot dirt from your eyeballs. An idiom, again, it has a double meaning. It's not clear from the individual words used, but we all kind of understand what they mean. If I were to say, well, let's face the music, guys, you know that means let's admit we're in a bad situation. Shakespeare himself created many idioms that we still use today. For example, heart of gold. I'm sure you know what that means, or you can figure it out. Gold is good. Having a heart of gold means something very good. To kill someone with kindness. I can't literally kill you by being nice to you, but you can kind of figure out the meaning of that phrase. Laughing stock. Similarly, wild goose chase. We're not chasing geese literally, but if I send you on a scavenger hunt for something that isn't there, we all understand what that phrase means. So a couple more literary devices are monologue and soliloquy. Say it with me. Soliloquy. A monologue is a long, drawn-out speech by one character in a play or movie, and here's the key, while other characters are present. So a monologue, for example, say I am up in front of the classroom. Think of that as our stage. Miss Atkins is there also on the stage with me. She isn't speaking, but I am, and I go on and on and on for a little while. That would be a monologue. However, when Mrs. Atkins is not there, and it's just me talking for a long time all alone, think of that as a soliloquy. So monologue, long speech by one character in a play, while other characters are there. The other characters just aren't speaking. A soliloquy, long speech, but the character on stage is alone. No one else is on stage with them. Here you have an example, if you have the slideshow up on your screen. If you don't, you can always go back and pull it up. You have a soliloquy by David Tennant, former Doctor Who actor, doing Hamlet in England. So fun. If you want to check that out, you guys will probably recognize the soliloquy, whether you've seen or read Hamlet or not. Let me know. Another literary device is aside. An aside is a character's remark either to the audience or to another character that others on stage do not hear. An aside also reveals the character's private thoughts. Furthermore, you have dramatic irony. Dramatic irony is when the audience knows more than the characters in the play or in the story. For example, and we're not going to spoil anything here, but you probably know, as we're reading Romeo and Juliet here in the near future, the audience, you, probably knows what is going to happen to those two characters long before it actually happens. And dramatic irony, the reader knows something that the characters don't know yet. It's a way of building suspense or building tension. You know it's going to happen. They don't know. You can shout at the movie screen or you can shout at the stage all day, but the characters can't hear you. And then it happens anyway. The tension just builds and builds and builds and then rewards you with a spectacle. Protagonist and antagonist. You guys know this already, but just to review. A protagonist is the main character or hero or heroine in a story. An antagonist is the villain or opposition in a story. For conflict, typically there are 4 types of conflict or tension within stories. Think of conflict as a fight or as, a battle between 2 forces. Conflict can show up in 4 different ways. The first is person versus person. Here, a protagonist is set in direct opposition to an antagonist. So you have a good guy and a bad guy, basically. Conflict type 2 is person versus society. In this type of conflict, a protagonist is fighting against society in some way, like a government, groups of people, or anything like that. You Think of the Hunger Games. You have Katniss. At first, she's fighting, at the surface, she's fighting 100 different other people her age in a battle royale. But if you think about it in a different way, especially as the story goes on, she's fighting basically her whole society, her whole government, Panem. Moving forward, conflict type 3 is person versus self. Here, the protagonist battles within his or herself, typically over actions that they have done or continue to do. So basically, that person is wrestling with something they've done, or potentially wrestling with depression or anxiety, another like an issue. They're not really fighting anyone literally on the outside, but there's kind of like a battle raging within themselves. Last but not least, conflict type 4 is person versus supernatural. In this scenario, the person is set against a fictional monster, alien, or creature of some sort. Think about old movies like Dracula. A person is going up against the vampire. Think of werewolf movies, same kind of thing. Anytime where you have people versus monsters that probably aren't real, that would be person versus supernatural. Ignore that date. Your summary is due tomorrow. So keep that in mind. You have access to a Google Docs submission form in Unified Classroom. Of course, we aren't checking your annotations per se right now, but do make sure that you follow the directions in that Unified Classroom assignment. Have a wonderful day and continue to stay well and safe, my friends. Bye.